This is a typical landscape that you might find in any Central Texas home. It's called xeriscape. Many residents, many homeowners opt to use, instead of lawns, they'll opt to use what's called xeriscaping, which is, as you can see here, it's decomposed granite. They use a lot of native plants. It requires very little water. And a client of mine asked me to come over and give him some ideas. He did such a wonderful job on the landscaping, but we kind of felt that the yard needed just a little something extra. He wanted a little color, and he kind of felt that his walkway was a little bit bland. So what we came up with was a walkway liner that is made of pavers that we will mosaic with glass tiles. And the colors that we're going to choose are colors that will accent not only the plants around and the ground, but also the color of the house behind me. So here we are in the studio. The first step in making our pavers is breaking the glass. This glass here was, we got this at a hobby store, and it's just stained glass, sheets of stained glass, and they come in a lot of amazing colors. We wanted to put some mirror tile in the project, and so this mirror was just found at Target. Here I have a glass cutter, and this one's kind of unique. Most glass cutters you see will actually look like this. Kind of looks like a little pencil, has a little ball at the end, and the cutter, the little blade is down here. It's not sharp. And so this kind of acts as the same thing. It has the little blade here, and it actually has a little reservoir where you put oil in it, cutting oil. When you push down, a little bit of oil kind of squirts out, and so that keeps the glass from getting too hot. So what I'll do is I start off with finding kind of a clean towel, and I like to use the terry cloth, the little fuzzy side. There's two sides to it. I kind of like to use the fuzzy side because it kind of traps the little tiny glass shards. So here we go. I'm going to start cutting. You don't really need to put a lot of pressure, but you do need to start from one edge and go all the way across to the other edge. And it does a little score. Now just to show you really simply, here I actually like to take this one because this little ball here, I put it underneath and you just gently press. There's some backing on the back of this glass, so it's kind of why it's sticking together there. Okay, so now here we go. We're going to cut up a bunch of small pieces. And I'm just going to start scoring from one side to the other. I'm not pushing down very hard. Now I'm going to just start kind of going at angles. And of course, if you look, I'm going to have a bunch of kind of diamond-shaped pieces. So I want some triangles and some other shapes. So I'm going to actually come back and go a little bit diagonal here. Here we go. So you can look. This is kind of a quick way to get a lot of small, irregular pieces. The next step is to break the glass. We're going to take the other end of the cutter and start tapping on the glass like this. We're going to try to encourage the glass to continue breaking. If the glass doesn't break, at that point you might want to kind of turn it over and start tapping the back side. And you see here it's starting to break. And we'll just keep tapping until we get this. Looks like this is working really well on this side. And so I'm going to turn the pieces over and see if they're actually breaking the way I want them to break. I've got a little pair of needle nose pliers here that have the little tips wrapped with tape. I'm going to take and grab one edge of the glass and with my other hand just gently apply pressure and break it. The reason that I have these on the towel is so that the roughness of the towel kind of helps pick up some of the real small glass bits. My next step is I'm going to make sure all the little tiles are kind of in the middle. And I'm going to kind of roll it up like a little burrito. You just kind of work the tiles. I'm not breaking the tiles. They're already broken, but just the friction of them rubbing up against each other will help to kind of grind the edges down so that they're a little softer. It's always one of my biggest worries when I work with glass is, afraid I'm going to get cut. And inevitably that is a part of working with glass, is you do have little mishaps and little cuts here and there. Okay, here's my bowl. I'm going to kind of funnel these. And so then all I need to do now is just take and go kind of shake the towel out in a trash can. After you've cut all of your pieces, I like to put my colors in individual bowls, something that's easy to kind of carry around and big enough for me to be able to kind of stick my hand in and shuffle the tiles around to find the right piece. Just for ease of demonstration, I've already pre-laid out one brick, and so what I'm going to show you is just how I actually physically put them and adhere them to our walkway brick. So the product that I've chosen today to use is a pre-mixed ceramic tile thin set mortar. And I chose the color gray because that's the color closest to our walkway paver that we're putting our tiles on. This one is for ceramic floor and wall tiles. I chose this because my application is for an outdoor use. So I want to be sure people may walk on this, it may get rained on, but I like to use the pre-mix just because it's just a little easier. It's nice to be able just to open up a bucket, use the material, keep the lid on it so it doesn't dry out, and just kind of be done with it when you're done. And I'm going to go ahead and just smear kind of a thin layer. And I tell you what, I'm going to do half the brick at a time. And the reason is because I don't want the material to dry out too quickly. It'll take about 15 minutes to kind of set up, and then it'll take 24 hours to actually dry and cure. Okay, so now that I've got a thin layer on here, I am literally just going to transfer the tiles. So what I'm doing is taking out some of the adhesive that kind of bubbled up over the edge of the tile. And that's just because I know that our grout is going to be a little bit darker gray. And so I don't want I don't want this bottom stuff to show through the adhesive after we grout it. So now we have our bricks have dried. The tile is set on the bricks. They've sat for 24 hours. So the next step is to go ahead and grout the bricks. And so we've got our bricks. We've got our concrete, which is just an Alamo Portland cement you can buy at the hardware store. You need sand. You need gloves and a buffing rag and a little spatula for mixing. You're going to need a bucket of water, and then you're going to need a mixing bucket, and then also a little cup for measuring. I'm looking at the sand right now, and I see that there's rocks in the sand, and we don't really want that for grouting purposes. So what I'm going to show you, the next step I'm going to show you is how I sift the sand. So as part of our prep, I'm just going to show you real quick here how I'm going to screen my sand that has the rocks that are a little too big to use for grouting. All you need is a large bucket. I can get that at the hardware store in the concrete section. And then you need a screen. And so this one I made myself, and it's just 1x4s and screen hardware cloth. And that's pretty easy to make. If you don't have if you don't have those items, you could probably just use a kitchen tea strainer. And this is not a real messy deal unless you use a smaller bucket. That's kind of why I like a big wide bucket. I'm just going to pour the sand in here. I'm just going to kind of take my hands and just shove it around. And you see the rocks will start to kind of come up. And I just move it all around to screen the sand. It's kind of like magic. Look at all the pebbles kind of just magically appearing there. All right, I think I've done enough. So then this, I'm just going to set this down. And then what's left is some really nice, fine sand. Now that we have our sand sifted, we're ready to start mixing the grout. I like to use a 1-to-1 ratio, which is 1 cup of the concrete to 1 cup of the sand. Okay, I'll just put those in there together. And then now we're ready to put water in. The consistency you want to be looking for is sort of like the consistency of cream cheese. So I'm going to take my cup here. Well, actually, I'm just going to take my little bucket, and I'm just going to pour a little bit of water in. Not much. You want to start out with a little bit and just start mixing it together. And you want to get that all mixed in really well. And you can see there's still some lumps in here. It's still a little dry. So I'm going to add a tiny bit more water. This mixture actually looks a little wet. I may have added just a tiny bit too much water. So what I'm going to do is come over and get a little bit of sand mixture and get a little bit of the concrete mixture. So you have to kind of play with it until the consistency's right. And that's a little bit better. You see it you can sort of start to form a ball with it. What I like to do is I like to work in production line fashion. I'll smear the grout on one brick, and then I'll go right to the next, and I'll go to like 2 or 3 bricks at a time, maybe 3 bricks at a time. And by the time I'm done with the 3rd brick, the first brick will be ready for the next step. So here we go. This is simple. All you do is just put it on the brick, and that's why we wear the gloves. Concrete will dry your hands out. So you really don't want to try to touch it too much with your hands. So I'm just smearing it all on there. Kind of use the palm of my hand a little bit. Actually move this out of the way. So it doesn't take much. Keep my excess. So I'm kind of using my hand to sort of squeegee off some of the excess tile here. And that brick is ready to just set aside and let this sit for maybe 5 minutes. And we're ready to move on to the next brick. And we just do the same thing. Now I like to use concrete as it gets harder and it cures over time. And sometimes if you're using just regular grout, it has a really high sand content, and sometimes that will weaken. But with concrete, this is meant to go outdoors. And if you want to take a look, you can start to see this brick is already starting to get a little haze. You see where it's just starting to kind of dry on the tiles? That's good. You want to see that. If you used a wetter concrete mix, it takes longer to dry. It takes longer to do this hazing. So after I've finished the 3rd brick, putting the grout on the 3rd brick, I'm looking over here at the first one, and it looks like it's about ready to go for a second pass. So, and the reason is because the haze is starting to come over. See that? When I just kind of brush the tip, how it just starts to kind of brush off. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to start kind of digging the tiles out. And we're just getting rid of more of that excess. It's still too wet, though, to buff, but yet still dry enough to start pulling away at that, revealing some of the tiles. Okay. I think that looks good. Go around the edges. Okay, now I'm going to move to the next tile. I'm going to go ahead and clean off my area just so that I can have a little cleaner workspace. And the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take a little wire brush and go back with another pass. I see some of these areas still need to be kind of dug out, and the wire brush is really good for that. So I'm going to go ahead and take the little wire brush and go ahead and start to dig out the tiles and get them to kind of come up and say hi to me. So there we go. We're just going to kind of work it. You don't really want to go like this you don't want to go like on a crack per se, because you don't want to really dig the concrete much below the surface. So all you're doing is just kind of uncovering the tiles that are buried. And that guy right there is ready. Now that's ready to set aside. I'm going to move to the next one. And this doesn't take any time to do. You notice I've not used any water to clean the tiles with. This is kind of an old school method. This is how the brick masons did it years ago. And now's the time that if you see that you need, you need a little bit more concrete, now's the time you can kind of fill it in. You can take some of the powder, you can even re-wet it if you have to, and just kind of fill in spots that might not have covered. All right, this guy's ready to go sit over here. Okay, we're at the last stage of our tiles, and this whole process should really take you no longer than maybe 15-20 minutes with 3 bricks. I use a towel. This is an old towel. And you want to keep it dry. You want it to be a dry towel. And I just use the towel and I start buffing the tiles. And that tile is finished. And we're ready to move on to the next. Now that we're done grouting, our bricks are ready to be installed in their new home. We install the pavers by digging a channel on either side of the walkway, adding sand as a foundation since sand compresses evenly over time, and leveling with a 2x4. Finally, we're ready to lay the pavers.